I'm graced today to be speaking to the great Anncois. We are going to speak about delivering predictability, change management, executive facilitation, program management. Could you please, Anncois, introduce yourself and what do you do for business?
Noor, thank you very, very much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. So as I've just been introduced, I am Anncois. I'm an executive coach. Also from a team management perspective, I specialize in agility. And what I do is I have taken a novel approach towards coaching. And what that is about bringing safety, security, and predictability to teams. And I do this by putting people first, right? And I'm bringing about organizational change in a way, right, that makes organizations understand that you can't bring about transformation or change if you don't put your people first, make them feel safe, make them feel unique and empowered. And I've done that successfully, and it's a model that I'm replicating and bringing out into the market.
Whoa, that's amazing. Anncois is quite an interesting name. Where does it come from? If I may ask.
You may ask as much as you want. It is from French descent, from my mother's side of the family. And before you ask, I thought I was extremely rebellious in school and in my younger years, and I didn't take learning French any further than what I should have, and I've regretted it ever since.
Fantastic. So, yeah, let's jump to your business now. What is a safe space?
All right, so I'll start with an example, all right, because I always like to put things into context. So I was talking to a colleague recently, all right, and I was trying to explain things, and instead of saying, all right, two concepts would dovetail very well, I accidentally said, okay, they would pigeon-toe very well. And if I hadn't been in a safe space with this colleague, it could have been the most mortifying, embarrassing experience of my life. Because the colleague could just have it burst out laughing, going, oh, Anncois, what an absolute idiot you are at the end of the day, right? Because I mean, that is such a stupid thing to say. However, I was in a space with my colleagues where I could actually make a stupid, all right, blunder like that. And that is exactly what psychological safety is all about at the end of the day. So if we look at Amy Edmondson from Harvard, they have defined for us that psychological safety is where we are encompassed within our teams or within our groups, and we feel that we have the security and the support, right, from an interpersonal perspective, to take risks, calculated risks where we have the support, as I've said, and we will have the backing to make certain mistakes and the consequences of those mistakes, all right, or those pushing ourselves beyond those boundaries within our teams or within our tribe spirit, whatever it is, will be accepted, and we will not be ostracized for making, all right, our suggestions and everything like that. They might not all be accepted, but we will not be made to feel like we are pariahs at the end of the day. So that is what psychological safety is. So if I was not in a team, all right, that had psychological safety, I would be the laughing stock, and that would be carried on throughout the organization for days to come. Even if they do tease me about this, I now know it will be in a good-hearted way, as opposed to, oh, you know, she's such an idiot. She always says the most stupid things. So that's the difference between it being maniacal and between it being good-hearted at the end of the day. That is psychological safety.
I am more than overwhelmed by what you have just said. Could you explain how did you come up with this idea?
Psychological. So I wish I was the one who necessarily came up with it, but it's a psychological, shall we say, it's a psychological theory, and studying psychology and coaching and everything like that. It has been around for a very long time, and Edmondson and Jürgen brought this to our fore. And if you look at some of the models that we've put together, one of the biggest things, all right, that tears a team apart is that we can't trust each other. And if we can't trust each other, how do we accurately communicate, all right, and know that someone's going to have my back? And if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, one of the bottom pyramids is safety. And safety does not just come in line with being safe at home, being safe from a burglar or anything like that. It is being safe from attacking and onslaught from your teammates, from management, from those below you even. So the psychological safety part of it is we're always feeling that people are ready to attack us on that onslaught. And we need to create, especially as leaders, that psychological safety, all right, for our teams and our teammates. So it's not just sit back and they must create it for me. It is my duty to create it for my team members. And as a coach, I need to empower my team and teach them how to do it and perpetuate that throughout the rest of the organization.
If I may ask you, like, have you had a secure, let's say, growth or secure childhood until now?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I've had quite a few that I have had the honor, all right, of taking on the journey and seeing it through. And the most wonderful part of that is, as we grow together, it comes to that point where you see what I'd like to call the aha moment. And that aha moment is when you see suddenly it makes sense that the minute I let go and I am willing to be vulnerable, right? I don't know if you've ever watched any of the Brené Brown, right, series or any of the talks on the TED Talks. So do yourself a favor and watch Brené Brown. She gives quite a very good talk on vulnerability. And the minute we are willing to be vulnerable, right, and vulnerability is not weakness. Vulnerability is the willingness to say, okay, you know what, I am human. I'm going to make mistakes. And if our team is vulnerable towards each other, I'm far more likely to give you a chance and understand that you are human if you're willing to understand that I'm human. And that vulnerability is one of the biggest parts and one of the biggest times that you and I are going to be willing to trust each other, because you have shown me that you are vulnerable and I'm going to give you so much more latitude in creating that at the end of the day. So yes, at MTN I created that. Now in South Africa we have this entity called Eskom. They're the ones who are dropping the ball all the time. Believe it or not, one of my best teams that I had the honor of working with, and that was a couple of years ago, was at Eskom. And they were in the beginning a team where there was so much infighting in this team. There was racial issues, there was sexism issues and everything like that. But once we broke through those cultural, right, and gender issues, and we stripped that down and had the teams understand each other, it became one of the most powerful teams in that organization. And we actually created them as change agents. And they actually infiltrated, and I literally call it infiltrated because they call themselves the IRA, infiltrated other departments within the organization and replicated what we did, because it was so powerful, that level of trust that they created amongst each other, right, and within, right, the departments that they went into. Just understanding how powerful it can be if we work together. I don't know if you've ever worked or walked past a project team or a squad, and you just see them, and when they work together, it's like you can walk past and they hum. They click. You just feel that energy and that vibe when they're working together. That is psychological safety. It's almost as though they know what the other one is thinking. That is that psychological safety that they're feeling.
Awesome. When was the moment when you realized that people are gonna pay for this program, this business model, or this idea is gonna be successful?
To be honest with you, in the beginning, I wasn't sure that they were going to be willing to pay for it. I felt so passionately about it that I was willing to throw caution to the wind almost and just say, this is a message I feel so strongly about. I might have to do something else on the side, but there is so much benefit that is to be gained out of this that I will grind and I will do whatever I need to do to get this message out there and then commoditize. But I have to get this out there because it is my passion, is to see people succeed and empower them. And if I can get enough people empowered and enough teams empowered, then in time, we will be able to show, all right, the changes that we are bringing about in organizations, and we will show that you cannot bring about a change without a team that has psychological safety.
On a scale, yeah, go ahead, Anncois, please.
No, it will then reap its own fruit, and it will become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
On a scale from 1 to 10, how passionate were you about your idea?
Exceptionally passionate, as passionate as I am now.
On the same scale, how sure or how certain were you that your idea is going to succeed?
Absolutely, unequivocally, 100%. It is based in the psyche of humans. The only difference is it is sometimes very difficult to quantify, right, to business and to people, because you can't say, if I do this, your team is going to be able to deliver this deliverable in 95.37% faster, because we're now talking about behaviors, and behaviors, it's sometimes a bit more, more qualitative as opposed to quantitative at the end of the day. And fortunately, time has gone by and organizations as a whole are now turning around and saying, we are now catching on to it. They sometimes do get a little bit delayed, but they are now starting to come on board and realizing that behaviors, right, and the way people are behaving is based on a value. And if our organizational values don't address, all right, what the people are behaving as, that is when we're going to have this discord. And that is when we're going to get what is called bad culture. But there is no such thing as bad culture. Bad culture is just actually when people are behaving and believing in one thing. So your belief drives your behavior, and the values of the organization, on the other hand, there's discord between the two. And that is where we need to that brings your psychological safety in here again, is what we are believing and how we are behaving, does that align with what the organization is showing us? And that is what we do. We bring those areas into alignment. So it is extremely important. So we do exactly the same exercise with the executives, the senior managers, because they require the same psychological safety. Because if we think that in teams we interfight, when you see what happens in that executive boardroom, those are like killer sharks, right, attacking each other.
Let me ask you, was your certainty based on your, let me say, personal conviction, or was it based on your professional knowledge?
It was based on both. It was professional knowledge, it was personal conviction, And it was also based a lot on observation, feedback, and in-depth analysis that I have done. So I very seldomly just plot into a path without having done some form of assessment and analysis and that kind of thing as well. So I wouldn't just go throw caution to the wind and just to run off and do this. So obviously I had done intense research, seeing what the psychiatrists, psychologists, that kind of thing had done, right? And obviously how it had been applied, what white papers were out there, what that kind of thing, and then brought this report. I'm obviously not the only person who's brought this about, but what has worked, what hasn't worked, what works in a South African context, and obviously what has worked in an international context. And I've traveled around the world doing this. And how do we work in different organizations, in different industries, and with different realms of people? And then how do we make it tangible and real and measurable at the end of the day, and not make a person feel like they are not unique? To me, that is extremely important, is every person is unique, and that we need to celebrate, and we need to make people understand that they are unique, and that is what makes them so valuable.
Could you explain a little more about your researches and the results you had about these researches?
All right. So I started with Amy Edmondson, and she is from Harvard Business School, and she started publishing quite a lot of work around the interpersonal communication and the interpersonal effects that psychological safety has, right? And the definitions that you brought in around psychological safety. I then went further, and I took in what came out of GIPS, which is the Gordon Institute of Business here in South Africa, to get a South African feel around it. And what I did then is I went on to LinkedIn, and I published some of the works that I had personally researched on LinkedIn, and I asked a lot of the students on LinkedIn from the psychology departments, but also some of the analysts and statisticians for their input. All right, and what their take on this would be. I then also incorporated other agility coaches, right? But then furthermore, the mindset coaches, which do what I do as well. And out of all of that, I then started putting together models, all right? But more from a frameworking rather than just the modeling perspective. And out of all of that is where I got my tangible information and data from. So it wasn't just me sitting here in my study thinking, okay, I think this is probably going to work with that, it's probably going to work, that kind of thing. And I then took it one or two steps further, and I brought in and I workshopped with quite a number of coaches, and then new teams and old teams. I went into organizations and I asked them, would they be willing to participate and take what I've put in front of them and tear it apart completely. Tell me what they feel about it. Would it work for them? Would it not work for them? And we took it from there.
And you came up with your model.
I came up with, yes, with what would work, what wouldn't work. And every team is different. So you've got to adapt, you've got to adopt, and every team is different because you're working with different personalities, you're working on different projects, you're working in different organizations, because you've got to align it with the values of the organization, with their strategy, with their timelines. All of that you have to bring into it. So you can have your framework at the end of the day, but you still, and that is where the experience starts coming into it, because it's definitely not a Control-C, Control-V exercise at the end of the day, by no means. Because if you try and do that, you might as well, quite honestly, write it on your stomach and wash it off, because it's just never going to work for you.
So finally, you came up with your own model. Could you explain what your own model is? How does it work?
So I can give you a high level introduction, because it's not complex, right? But it takes some getting used to. The very, very first thing that we do, obviously, is the engagement. And then, as always, is understanding what the actual need is that the team has, what the need is from the managerial perspective, all right? And what it is that they don't just think that they need, but also what they want. So that comes out of an in-depth assessment. And that assessment is not something that you necessarily just sit down and write on a piece of paper. We do that as well. But I will meet with the team members. I will send anonymous surveys. It depends on the kind of people that you have. So if you're dealing with your Generation Z, like we have at the moment, they don't necessarily like filling in forms. They are far more interested in giving me a WhatsApp. All right, send me something funky, send me something that is interesting. So that's why I said you've got to understand who you're working with. Whereas if I'm dealing with baby boomers, they are far more, okay, I want to fill in a form and I want to give you all my details and blah, 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 fish back. So that's why I said to you, it's an assessment, understanding your people, and then out of that, unpacking, understanding what are your burning platforms, all right? What is it that is hurting? Is it trust issues? Is it communication issues? It's always trust, always communication. Do we have problems with regards to communication between the genders? Do we have maybe interracial issues? Do we have issues between the management? Is there pressures from the environment? Is it a macro, all right, or a macro and a micro environmental issues? Is it just culturally based, all right? Is the organization going through a transformation? All of those factors need to be brought on board. Then what we do is we take that all together and we now start workshopping. And we say, okay, from a team perspective, all right, and we've got the managers as well. And one very, very important point here is when we go into discussions like this, the managers and the senior managers do not get taken into the same, all right, workshop grouping as what the employees do. And there's a reason for that. Because the minute you do that, what happens to the everyday employee when I have my manager in the room with me? Do you think I'm going to have the freedom to speak the way I would want to?
No.
No. No. I'm going to do what? If the manager says, no, there's not a problem in this team, I'm going to have to be a very confident or confrontational employee, right? Confrontation isn't always a bad thing. We encourage positive confrontation. But if the manager says there's no problem, we have full trust, everybody in the team is going to look at each other or look up or suddenly get busy on their cell phones. So we probably remove them once over and then say to the team, all right, so what is it? What are your burning issues? Let me unpack, let's understand, and create that safety space for them to discover it with me. And then I don't allow it to stop there. Because if you say to me, I have a problem with communication. Fantastic. So, Noah, explain to me, what do you mean with communication? And then that is where we find okay, what do you mean? What does communication mean? That's exactly my question to you. So when you say to me communication, explain to me in your own words what you interpret communication to be. Because to me, communication could mean something completely different to what communication could be to you. And for a lot of people, communication they see as email. And communication isn't email.
Okay.
It's not. Because by rights, communication is an immediate response between two people. Oh, okay. So that's not communication. That is messaging.
Mm-hmm.
Communication is what you and I are experiencing right now. It is a flow of information right now between the two of us. So we make those mistakes. We say, okay, we're going to communicate to the whole organization. All right? And are they going to communicate back to you? No. Possibly not. So you know what? We will be sending out, you know what I mean, messaging to the whole organization or similar or such. So that's ways that we have abused almost the English language or taxonomy and ontology at the end of the day. Same thing with, okay, we need more trust, right, or respect in the team. Fantastic. So if you say we need more trust in the team, or we need more respect, I specifically love this one. What does it mean when you want more respect? How do you feel? How do you see respect playing out? Then we've all heard this one. What is it usually? Oh, this is right. Oh, the fantastic one. All right. Treat people. All right. I want to treat people. I want to be treated. Yeah, that's right. Treat everybody as you want them to treat you.
Okay.
Really, that's not a psychological place of safety, because you don't want to be treated the way I want to be treated. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if I want to treat everybody the way I want to be treated, is that creating a nice workspace? Actually, no. So if I want to create a good workspace, what should I be saying? I should be treating everybody the way they want to be treated, not the way I want them to treat me. Those small nuances. Comme ça. So now do you see how important this starts becoming? Because previously I was saying, treat them the way I want to be treated. I will treat people the way I want them to treat me. Mm-hmm. But not everybody wants to be treated the way Anncoiss wants to be treated. Some people just want to be left alone to get on with their stuff. Whereas Anncoiss wants maybe everybody to greet her in the morning. But that maybe doesn't float your boat. So when we start understanding and giving each other that space, right, and that respect, and that's where the respect and the trust comes in, to be open and honest with each other, it changes the whole team dynamic. And when I have a team dynamic like that, where does that leave me? It leaves me with a team that is free to express, right? That is free to now start working together, all right? And actually, and this is the most pivotal and important point for me, I must be honest with you, all right? We can now become efficient, all right? Instead of just being effective. How does that sit with you?
I would ask you to differentiate between the two terms.
So, actually, no, it's the other way around. I want to become effective rather than just efficient. Yeah, sorry, I'm wrong, the effective rather than just efficient. I want to be really good at what I do rather than just do a lot of it. I had it the wrong way around. So if I'm here to do, I would rather do one webinar with you and do it really well and reach out and touch people and drive home a message. Then do 10 webinars, all right, and not really get a message across. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you present these. Would you rather reach one person in there and really make a change in their life? Or would you present 10 and not really affect anybody in what you're doing? So you want to be effective, right? Rather than just efficient.
Oh, yeah. So the idea here, like you require or you need a lot of consciousness, a lot of awareness, a lot of education for the trained staff. How do you do that? Like you want to deploy, you want to use a new workplace culture, workplace respect, and all of these values. How do you instill, how do you develop these skills in the staff?
So that is exactly where the coaching comes in, is literally going into the organization, spending time with the teams. Sometimes we take them and do workshops. We do lean coffees, all right, online webinars. I sometimes sit with the teams while they're busy working, listening to how they're talking, right, engaging with them by a cell phone. And the most important part is once they've had that initial exposure to what it is that it can be, what we then want is we want to not hold people responsible, but we want responsible people.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that is what you want. You want people, I don't want to hold you. I want you to become responsible and accountable yourself. Right, and when you feel the passion, you are going to, it sits in the back of your mind and you are going to catch yourself doing certain things and then correcting yourself. And as a team, you start holding each other, right, accountable for what you're doing. And then as a coach, as a coach, am never going to say to you, that was wrong, because I'm not your school teacher. I'm going to say to you, all right, I saw what happened there. What do you think you could possibly have learned out of that? And what would you change should that happen again?
So let me ask you this, Anncois. Like your program or your method requires a lot of personal, let's say, personal belief, personal conviction of what you are doing. Like you require the trainees to believe in what you are doing. What if they don't believe?
So there are going to be people who don't believe. Absolutely. And if there's a saying that says, a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. So some people will just never want to believe. Now, people are not scared of change. They are scared that they are expected to change themselves. But when you see that things are really working for other people around you, it's really hard not to try and get on board that train yourself. So I'll give you an example. When I was at MTN, I had a very strong-minded enterprise architect, right? As part of one of the teams that I was working with. And at that stage, I had 23 teams I was working with. And he was adamant. He will not participate in any of this because Afrikaners in general, and I'm just painting it across the board, Afrikaans men tend to be very much like German men. And I'm just brushing it, okay? They rule the roost and they will only do what they want to do. And this Afrikaans chappie said, you will not change my mind. I will decide what I do. And I said, you know what? That's fine. Please do not, whatever you do, don't feel there's no pressure on you. You watch what we're doing. And if you feel that this will work for you, join in. If you don't, that's quite all right. I truly understand. As long as you please promise me, you will not stymie what we're doing for the rest of the team. And the team was having fun. We were growing, right? And exploring new avenues. And the team was just growing closer and closer and closer. And the more this was happening, I was keeping an eye on Mr. Z. And you could see he was like, and I thought, you stay there. You stay there, I'm watching you. And the team was having more fun, and the team was having more fun. And when we went for lunches or something like that, I would invite him. And he was adamant he wouldn't come, but I could see in his face that things were working. And he was concerned because he doesn't want to be part of this, all right, in his mind. But actually in his soul and in his gut, he knows that this is the right thing to do. And you know what happened? At the end of the day, he begrudgingly went along with what we were doing. He was never 100% a, you know what, I am wholeheartedly in this kumbaya, clap hands and go along with everything. But you know what? The team brought him around because in their own way, they eventually turned around and said to him, you know what, just get over yourself. We need you to form part of this because you're part of the team, so just get over yourself. So yes, some people are not going to believe, but it's a team. You're not bringing voodoo. All you are saying is, as a team, we need to bring it together. Bring your ideas, bring your courage. It's a safe space. And that's all it was with him as well. It was fear. He wasn't willing to be vulnerable initially. And eventually, he was actually one of the biggest, all right, people who went and spoke and said, if you want to create a strong team, bring Anncois. She's going to show you guys how to do this. Oh, and our big man. Fantastic.
So, Anncois, like, do you have like more women or men believers? Like your believers, are they more men or more women?
Do you know? The women tend to be better communicators. The men, at the end of the day, tend to be the ones that are quicker, all right, to try the vulnerability exercises, which is usually what we find. So the women are willing to communicate, but the men are willing to say, okay, I'm going to try this. Let me see if I can put my vulnerabilities on the table and go with the trusting. So it's absolutely 50-50. If we're going into an IT space, then there's obviously more men because that is still very much a male-dominated space. But when you go up into business, there's a lot more women. So to say more men, more women, comme ça, it's about the same. But yeah, women communicate, and the men are really, if you speak to them, willing to face the vulnerability issues quickly. It's fantastic, and I commend every single one of the men that I've worked with for doing that.
Yeah, that's amazing. I credit you for that. So my next question is, do you think you have developed your model to the place you are proud of, or to the place that you have dreamt of?
No, not at all. Not at all. I don't think I will ever get there because there's just so much that keeps evolving, and the industry evolves, and where we are from a coaching, a psychology, it all keeps evolving. I mean, look at where we were in the beginning of the year and where we're finding ourselves now, right? COVID has just come along and smacked everybody, and this has just put our teams under additional strain, and suddenly now we're working from home. Not everybody has all of the amenities, all right, and the tools and the technology. Even though our organizations try and provide us with this, we don't necessarily have it, okay? And you would have noticed with what you're doing is, what is the first thing when you log on to a webinar? What is the first thing people do? They switch off the camera. Mm-hmm. Now, it's true, right? For a lot of people, reading body language is a challenge at the best of times. Now we don't have that human interaction all the time. And for the little bit that we do, we now switch off the camera. So all you have is you have a voice, right? And if you're not really good right? Interpreting what is happening there, it is becoming such a lost art that when we do re-socialize, right, we're going to have problems. We already have problems, but we are going to have enormous problems because now it's the reintroduction of those teams to each other. So in a lot of organizations, we might be faced with Neanderthals, bless their cotton picking socks, coming back to each other. We've lost it. We've lost the communication. We've lost, and being away from each other and away from civilization as a whole, we now come back, right? And do you know what? Interacting with each other and human beings is going to exhaust people. And they're not going to have the patience anymore. So we're going to have escalations, all right, in conflict. And how many people have been taught to manage conflict properly?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what else would you like to say, Anncoiss?
I would like to say the door is open. Let's explore. There is so many opportunities out there, and there's so many companies we can reach, so many organizations, there's so many people that have a need. So it's not just about team safety, it's about individual coaching. There is so many avenues to what we're doing. So I provide individual coaching, I provide group coaching and that kind of thing. And the realm is so incredible. And I'm so blessed to have come across you, which has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for accepting my connection request. And the fact that we have, made a connection, it just shows how powerful it is. And I want to share this with your connections as well, and the people that are going to be watching the webinar, is don't be afraid to go out and make connections and broaden your network. You have so much power within you, and you have such an ability to influence other people, and there's so much that you can gain from making connections with people. You don't know who is out there and what you can add to their lives and what they can add to your life until you go out there and try.
Yeah. So at the beginning, you mentioned that your name Anncoiss comes from French. To end the meeting, yeah, I want you to explain what does Anncoiss mean.
No, you're not going to make me do that. You're not going to. You can explain it.
I can explain my name, but I'd like you to really explain your name. It's a very interesting name. And it really adds to my culture and other people's culture and knowledge, okay?
No, you're putting me on the spot, which is not, no, this is not, that was told to you in extreme confidence.
Yeah, we are
Okay,
live.
so,
yeah.
Glory be. All right. Okay. So it means she of extreme beauty and wisdom.
Yeah, it has been more than exhilarating talking to you, Anncoiss, today. I'm more than honored and pleased and humbled by your attendance today. Really.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And it has been my absolute honor to have shared the time with you. I have truly enjoyed it, and it has been extremely interactive and enjoyable. Thank you.
Thank you.